This is Trout Country, where 1 in 16 of Tasmania's people is a licensed angler. Over a century ago, in the lush Derwent Valley, Tasmania became the scene of the first breakthrough in naturalising trout in Australia. In 1864, at the third attempt, 100,000 brown trout eggs survived a voyage through the tropics in the sailing ship Norfolk. No mean feat in the days before refrigeration. 34 years later, rainbow trout were also successfully introduced. Both species were hatched in this stone trough among the mirrored surroundings of salmon ponds at Plenty, which thus became first centre of trout culture in Australia. Now it's a delightful park and picnic ground for the visitor, where trout at all stages may be observed in the many pools. During the winter breeding season, when the snow lies thick on the highlands, the mature trout flock up the rivers to their spawning beds. Many of them are trapped here in the Liawini Canal and transferred to lakes and streams by the Inland Fisheries Commission. The remainder are diverted to man-made breeding grounds higher upstream. A proportion of the fish caught are weighed and measured before release to keep a check on their numbers and condition. Tiny silver discs attached to the front of the dorsal fin mark the fish for all time. Rewards are paid to anglers who return them to the Fisheries Commission and so help these authorities to trace the growth and habits of the fish. Taken many miles to release points, they soon settle in their new waters. Some stay near where they are put in, but many wander out to sea and enter other coastal rivers to spawn again and multiply. Tasmania's trout season starts in August and ends in April. At this time, both hopeful and practiced anglers look to their equipment. Most anglers buy their gear, and sports goods stores stock a wide and fascinating range of equipment. Rods, waders and nets, hooks and flies, the whole gamut of the fisherman-hunter. But there is always the man who likes to make his own flies, with fur and silk and the wondrous plumes of the wild fowl, peacock, partridge, woodcock, golden pheasant and jungle cock. Flies' names are as wonderful as their appearance, and each is an individual. Royal Coachman, Cinnamon Quill, Zulu, Thunder and Lightning, and a host of others. Then the testing period, when the angler arrives at the riverbank to pit his skill and equipment against the wily fish. The real home of the trout is in the sparkling mountain and moorland streams, or the backwaters rich with minute aquatic life. Come spring and summer, the anglers seek the upland lakes. The call of the bush is strong, and fishermen are quick to respond to the bright sunshine and keen air. There are 5 ways to angle trout, and each has its strictly controlled areas. There is dry fly casting, wet fly fishing, spinning, the use of natural bait from boat or shore, or trolling from a boat. Sparkling lakes, man-made to produce hydroelectric power, are well stocked with fish and prove excellent hunting waters for the keen angler. The Derwent River, racing down from its mountain headwaters, is typical of the rivers in which anglers try their luck. Lake Dulverton in the Midlands has long been a boon to Outland schoolboys, impatient to try out their trout lore. Thoughts on social studies may well change to fish, as the sweep hand seems to move all too slowly to noon. Lunchtime cannot come fast enough, then a dash to the lakeside to spend a pleasant hour, more so if the fish are biting. Where flows the Shannon is the scene of a world-famous insect rise, where only dry fly fishing is allowed. In December, when the weather is right, the snowflake caddis moths hatch in their millions from cocoons long dormant on the river bed. The trout seem to wait for this day to converge on the short river and gorge themselves on the tasty insects. Word spreads among the fishermen too, and in hours after the rise begins, the banks of the Golden Half Mile are packed with anglers, pitting their skill and artificial flies against the surfeit of natural bait, which brings the fish from the placid reaches of the Shannon Lagoon into the swift-running half-mile stream which connects it to the Great Lake. It's grand fishing, this. The quiet beauty of Lake St. Clair, nestling under the looming bulk of Mount Olympus, invites you to tempt the big ones that lurk here, from the comfort of a seat in a boat. It's truly a paradise of fishing, strong fighting browns and rainbows. Or you can fish from the shore, where the friendly wildlife of this sanctuary tempts you to put the rod aside to make their acquaintance. It's only one of the hundreds of lakes and streams where the trout abounds, and where the fishermen who love to follow their sport in beauty congregate each season. It is here they come to the Trout Country, Tasmania.
I live in Melbourne, Victoria, some 300 miles across the waters of Bass Strait. So whenever I want to get out of the rat race for a few days and go fishing, I can have a line on the water wherever I choose in Tasmania in just under 1 hour. And that's what any angler is always looking for. How you going, Don?
Oh, right, no good here. I think we better go downstream a bit.
All right, fine. We'll head down there. We're going to move further down the river now to try our luck amongst the sea trout. The whitebait travel upstream on the tide, and the trout are usually there waiting for them. We'll also be looking to meet up with an old fishing friend, Ted Vertigan, who's an expert at catching sea trout.
This is the kind of fishing, Mike, that you won't find anywhere else in Australia. The sea trout come in from the oceans, feeding on the whitebait as they battle their way upstream to lay their eggs. It's really exciting fishing. You know, Mike, I'm looking forward to introducing you to Ted Vertigan. He's been fishing these waters for 75 years. He's a wonderful old fisherman. What he doesn't know about whitebait fishing down here in the estuary, no one knows.
In this river, all in the coastal rivers, there's two species of whitebait. There's the first run that comes about September. They're small, transparent ones. Then there's another run we call the anchovy. He's a bigger one, darker and stronger. And they're the ones the fish like to feed on. But they don't stay in the river, they go straight through. Nothing stops them. They'll go over a cement wall, over a weir. They'll get right in the edge where there's a trickle of water, and they'll wriggle up and stick on, and then a few more wriggles, and then over the top they go.
Winding past Lake House, a beautiful example of early colonial building in Tasmania is the Macquarie River. Recent rains have caused the river to flood, so it's going to take some long casts to get out to where the fish are feeding in the riverbed. There's a great stretch of river, Don.
Beautiful, Mike. I tell you what, before we go any further, I better show you the correct pliers for this morning. You have first the dun, which rises, I'll give you two of those.
Yeah.
And then later on in the afternoon, or just a bit after midday, you'll find the red spinner hatches. Well, now there's a couple of red spinner. One's a bit oranger than the other one.
Fine.
But that's what you want for the day out here.
Well, just being able to fish with you, Don, I'm getting my technique back a little, but watching you fish, I realize that it's an amateur along with a real professional.
There you go.
No, I envy you, so I'd love to see you cast a bit more, and I'll just stand back and have a look at you. What's the idea of what you're doing there in any case?
Well, the thing that I've noticed is a little bit different to how we cast here in Tasmania to what you do, is that we adopt a policy of trying to let our fly stop just over the water and then drop softly onto it.
Settle, yeah.
Settle gently like that, because especially when we get you up on the highland lakes up there and we have that crystal clear water, you've got to put your fly down very delicately.
It doesn't have to flip onto the surface. It just
Would you like me to show you what I mean? We sort of stop a little bit above the surface.
I just want to watch what you're doing with all your hands and that, because that's what I want to catch.
All right, well, we'll have a go. What we do, Mike, is sort of put it, instead of casting at the water, we cast up, and then let the whole lot sort of drop like that.
Yeah.
That's the way we've found it. See? The whole lot sort of drops down softly. Particularly when you're getting that crystal clear water in the highlands.
I'm always up early in the morning, so I'm taking the opportunity before we set out for another day's fishing to have a look around the beautiful city of Launceston. The mall is quiet and restful at this time of the morning before the city stirs into full life, and the view from the top of the gorge at Launceston was well worth the walk. Peacocks are friendly but quite independent creatures with a mind of their own. My knowledge of peacock language is naturally limited, so I merely said good morning, fed them their breakfast, and admired their plumage.
Morning, Mike.
Hello, Don.
Sleep well?
Like a top.
Oh, good. Well, let's get at 'em.
After Brumbies, huh?
Yep, right.
This is Brumbies Creek, and certain sections of it are strictly reserved for young anglers.
How are you, Stuart? Stuart, allow me to introduce you to Mike Pate, Stuart Scott.
How are you, Stuart?
Hello,
Nice to
Mike.
meet you indeed.
I'm very pleased to meet you.
Yeah, it looks like you're doing a good job with those youngsters down there.
Yes, I get a lot of pleasure out of teaching the children.
Well, the way they're casting, they're learning a lot from you, aren't they? Do you only just teach them how to spin?
No, we generally start off with bait, with worm, generally like
Yeah.
I did, you
Yeah.
did probably.
Yeah,
And as they get
a bit more
used
proficient on that,
to
eh?
fishing, they get onto the spinner. From the spinner, they see somebody fly fishing and want to go to fly fishing, and that's where they generally finish up.
I'll bet they all turn out to be great young fishermen.
Yes, they catch a lot of fish.
Yeah, I'm going to stick around and see if they do. Meeting up with Noel Jetson is always a great pleasure. He's one of the best fishing guides in the world. Hello, Noel.
All right, no, head on. Well, if you're ready, we'll give them a go for a couple of hours, eh?
All right, that's I came for the fish biting.
I hope so.
Hope you catch a few. Good luck.
Boys? Oh, not bad, Don. Now, why do they call Brumbies Creek the greatest stretch of fly fishing water in the world? Next day, we were at Lake Leak, and up early to get after the fish. It's spin fishing in these beautiful waters. How big do the rainbows go in Lake Leak these days, Don?
Oh, up around a kilogram, something like that, mate.
Yeah, it used to be a bit bigger a few years ago.
Oh, gosh, yes, this used to be it was called the greatest rainbow water in the world. They used to average about 7 pounds when they first put the rainbows in here in the turn of the century.
This was a man-made lake, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, they went right through the 1930s and 40s and 50s. They're up to 6, 7, 8 pound or 2 or 3 kilograms, whichever you want to look at it.
Yeah, I need to take about 3 or 4 of those home, and you could feed the house for it.
I would you can. Because it's only a shallow lake, you know. It only averages about 15 feet.
Yeah, I noticed on the far shoreline there, it came off very slowly and then just dropped down in the centre here. Over near that island, looks very shallow to me.
Oh, very weedy, and there's an awful large quantity of fly life, you know,
Yeah.
duns rising and all the rest of it.
Yeah, seen a few on coming down that way this time.
That's a nice bit of a bay, mate. Good a pick in there, mate.
All right, you figure that this red fin wobbler's going to work, huh?
It should do. One of the best in Tassie. It's the life, mate. Nice, easy, feasting.
Nice way to fish sitting down. I had to leave the boys here and go back to Hobart. I'd made arrangements to take a helicopter up into the Highland lakes.
Hello, Les.
Well, I did stop off for a bit of a flutter at the Rest Point Casino, but now it's up and away for the land of 3,000 lakes. That's the beautiful harbour of Hobart and the waters of the Derwent River below us as we head north to the highlands. Hard to believe it, I know, but it's true. There are 3,000 lakes down there, each one of them an angler's paradise full of big fighting trout. That's where the river mouth comes into the lake over there, is it not?
Yeah, yes. Well, you can see the fact that the water is so clear now, we'll have to be very careful moving around the edges.
Yeah, I noticed that before when you were wading through there.
If you wade, try and keep low, because today, although there's no insect life around the edges here, there may still be the odd one or two moving in. Now,
Yeah.
I feel we won't get much action the way the water is at the moment, possibly towards evening, but still fish it out and in.
Yeah.
Maybe the odd one or two moving over these shallows. So.
Yeah. Stir up around the reed beds.
Yeah. Usually towards evening you'll find they'll move in along the river, turn, and then feed upwind.
Yeah.
Now any fly that's sort of hatching in from here
Yeah.
will blow out.
Yeah.
And the flies coming to the fish,
Yeah.
they wouldn't come in this way because they'd have the wind behind them and they'd start to yaw, so they'll feed upwind.
Yeah. Coming in and around that way there. Yeah.
If you look on the stones, Mike, you'll see see there's a case of
Yeah.
one of the nymphs.
Yeah.
Now the nymphs hatch, the duns come up to the surface and float across the water. They're very poor flyers, so they just tend to drift to the other side of the shore. They go to the shore and then within 2 days they turn into the highland spinner.
That's the red.
The black. Now, they're the ones that we've seen all out over the land.
Yeah.
You don't tend to get them over the water. The highland spinners are all over the land, but you'll find the duns. Now they're the ones that we're going to try and represent. We'll fish either a brown nymph or a highland dun dry. Tonight, though, I should think they'll come in around the edges, though, and this is what we'll try and undo.
Yeah. We finished fishing at sunset the first day and were up at the crack of dawn the next day to try our luck again. You don't waste a minute of fishing in these parts. The fish tail right into the edge of the lake at this time of day, and that's a unique sight in itself. Now watch these fellas. Well, you can see how skill and patience pays off for the devoted trout fisherman. This fella gave me a big thrill. Getting him on my line made getting up at dawn very worthwhile.
Up here in the highlands, fly fishing is by no means the only way to catch trout. Here at Murderous Hut on Swan Bay at this end of Great Lake, there's another couple of ways that we'd like to show you. I met up with Jim Rushton and Alan Cowley, and I'd like to talk to them about how they catch fish. That's a pretty good looking grub you got in your hand there, Jim.
Yes, this is what we use, Mike, to catch them up here with. This is one of our popular baits, and very good in night fishing.
That's a wattle grub.
That is a wattle grub, yes.
And pretty lively too. I see one or two trying to eat their way through the sides of your box there.
They're very, very tough. They're very hard to get, Mike, too.
Where do they come out of? Out of the wood trees?
Out of wattle trees.
Out of wattle trees.
Yes.
And you just string them on the hook and throw them out there?
Yes.
I noticed you got on your line there too, a stopper for the weight.
Yeah, we have a weight there, Mike. That helps you get out if you haven't got the big grub, because that is a large one.
Yeah.
That helps you get out, and also stops the sinker from coming down and knocking the grub off the hook.
Yeah, of course. It just lets it get away with it and the line lead out from it.
That's exactly right, yes. That's how it...
Any particular way of putting the grub on that's most effective to keep it on the hook?
Yes, well, the grub is very much larger than the shanked hook, so what we actually do, Mike, is to...
Put it under the throat?
Put it under the throat,
yeah.
And then we thread him right down to the hook. Make sure that the barb comes out, the point comes out of the grub.
At the tail, eh?
And then you pull the grub up the shank,
yeah.
And then you make a loop in the line and you thread it around the tough part of the head,
yeah.
And that leaves him in the long grub then for the cast.
Oh, that's a nice way of doing it there, very neat. And that skin's tough enough to stay on all
that
the time?
That will stay, you can cast out 30, 40, 50 yards with that, and that will stay on him there as he is there.
Oh, well, and these get the big ones for you?
And they get the big ones for us, but the trout actually, Mike, picks up the grub, and he don't swallow him immediately, he runs with him.
Yeah.
Therefore, you must not tighten the line.
No.
You let him go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he will stop.
Yeah.
The run will stop, your line will stop still, and then you're just taking the loose line, and you're ready for the strike.
Yeah.
And then you strike it.
Yeah. Alan, I see you got a flatfish on your line there. Is that your method of fishing here?
Yes, Mike. This is a very efficient method of lure. Over the last few years, it's become a very prolific lure. It's used very much today in Tasmania. We find it's a real killer on the lakes, travel very slowly behind the boat.
Yeah.
You get a wonderful action on these. They get a little wavy action, and you can always tell when it's working efficiently by the tip of your rod. Your rod is
As the indicator.
quite a little indicator, and you can tell that some people make these out of yew and pine. They're that delicate. You make them, and you tray them through the bath. You use a lot of trouble with the wives.
Yeah.
Tray them through, and you can have them perfect balance, the right action, but you put the paint on and you'll can upset the old balance.
The old balance, yeah. Well, that's imitating a frog, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Well, today they've turned themselves out in plastic. That's a plastic one, but I've been talking to Jim, and he's got some very fine wooden ones that are about 30-odd years old.
Yes.
The ones you were talking about probably made out of hewn pine.
Yeah, some of them, you can have them up to about 6 inches long. Surprising the size they go to for large fish. But today, you'd find them probably used more extensive than any other lure. But they are very deadly with the trout
I think
today.
we better get out and have a go with a few of those, huh? Well, Alan Cowley and Jim Rushton are off to try their luck out there. And we're off down to Lake Pedder and Gordon to try our luck down there. And with this lure that Jim Rushton just gave me, let's see what fish we get.
We arrived at Lake Pedder in the late afternoon, but we were naturally anxious to get out on the water as soon as possible. We did have a slight holder, while Noel exercised his strong right arm, starting an unwilling engine. Pedder is a man-made lake created by the Hydroelectric Commission. A magnificent stretch of water 3 times the size of Sydney Harbour, literally hundreds of square miles in area. This is the place to catch those really big thumpers. The trout can weigh up to more than 30 pounds in weight in these waters. How long's Pedder been flooded now, Graham?
5.5, 6 years.
Yeah. And before it was flooded with the other little smaller lake in the Pedder River, what was the size of the trout that you were getting out of it?
Well, there was no trout in this system, or virtually none, that we know of, except for the native fish that were in here, which is a cousin to the whitebait.
Well, what's sort of your the average size that you've been taking out of here?
Well, that averaged 12 pounds.
Yeah, fair size. Well, that's about as big as the one you took yesterday.
Yeah, it's about the size. They're about average size at 12 pounds. There was a fish caught in the lake last season, which weighed 21 pounds somewhat ounces, which was sent to the inland fisheries, and they estimated its age at that time as 5 years old, which meant it had put on a £5 a year for every year of life.
It was like dropped in what is it, fingerling, or about 5 years ago?
Yes, that's right.
That's an amazing amount of growth, 4 to 5 pounds a year.
I believe it's as high as anywhere in the world.
Oh, I should think so. Well, I think most other places around the world, people will be very happy and satisfied to get a 3 or 4 pound trout and think that they'd really caught something. If you're catching an average of up to around 10, 12 pounds, well, that's a place I think a lot of fishermen like to try their luck. Young Martin Gilmore looks as if he's hooked into a big one, but all he'd done was snag his hook. Try again, Martin. There are enough big ones left for all of us. Ron Stevenson hooked into a beauty so big his net proved too small to hold it. Bad luck, Ron. Better luck next time. Ron's hooked into another big fella, and this time the net is big enough. Look at that fella. It's been a great thrill for me to go fishing around Tasmania with such fine fishermen and good friends. And so, thanks, Don Gilmore, Noel Jetson, Graham Parker, Ron Stevenson, Martin, Scotty, Philip. It's been a beaut time. Thanks again.
It's been a wonderful 2 weeks fishing. And if I can catch fish like this in Tasmania, I'll be back next year.